soccer in the street. I went little. My favorite holiday was Nowruz. Great food, dancing, and music. My mother says I was big child, but that was a long time ago. I want to tell you my story. My friend Danny all read it for me because my English is so.
When I was 12, my parents finally gave up and took me out of school. A relative gave me a job working as a cobbler. It has been my trade ever since. I met my wife 17 years ago, and by the time the trouble started, we had 3 small children. At first, it seemed very far away. A teenager in the city of Dara, way in the south, was punished for anti-government graffiti. There were protests and soldiers fired on civilians. The protests spread to other cities, and so did the violence. But we never believed anything would happen in Aleppo. But then it did. At first, it was just protests. Then the fighting was everywhere. Government forces were on one side of our neighborhood and the rebels on the other. The bombing and shooting were continuous. Our home was covered with shrapnel marks, but if we left, we were never sure if we would make it back alive. Supplies began to disappear. When it was no longer possible to buy cooking oil, people would burn plastic, nylon, anything so that it was possible to make a meal. I remember that a government supply building was hit by a bomb. Everyone rushed to take what they could, including me. It was a matter of survival. Schools were turned into hospitals as injuries and deaths mounted. One day, I walked by an alley and I saw 25 bodies in a pile. The blood was still running. We were desperate to leave, but did not know where to go. It became clear, however, that if we stayed, we would die. So one day, we packed a few changes of clothes, some toys for our children, and sat down for a meal, and then we left. Immediately outside of Aleppo, we ran into an ISIS checkpoint. The soldiers seemed intoxicated, and I was sure they would kill us, but they didn't. We continued to Afrin, our ancestral homeland. Every 300 meters, we encountered another checkpoint, but we finally made it. Afrin was flooded with refugees. There was no bread and no space. We stayed with 25 other people in a relative's 2-room apartment. The situation was desperate, and after several weeks, we decided to go to Turkey. A guide smuggled us across the border, and we took a bus to Istanbul, where I found a job working with shoes. With help from the local Kurdish community, we were able to rent a small apartment and registered with the UN Registry for Refugees. We did not have enough money to keep our children in school and food on the table. My wife and I were so desperate that we contemplated trying to cross on a raft to Greece. I'm glad we did not, because one day I received a call that we were on a list to come to America. In Syria, we were taught that America is a violent and dangerous place. After all we had been through, that is not what we wanted for our family. But after 4 years in Turkey, we boarded a plane and flew to Boston. We settled in the home of a family who hosted us for a full year. When we entered their home, my wife saw a Star of David on the door and became frightened. We had been taught that Jews were bad people, impolite and untrustworthy. Instead, we found only kindness. So many people have volunteered to help us, and Jewish Family Service of Metro West has been there with us throughout. We never met people who gave so generously without expecting anything in return.
Thank you. I've been here 2 years and 2 months. It is hard to be, and I know that. I miss my family in Aleppo. I have not seen them for 6 years. We knew my wife not, and I want to stay here. My 3 children are in the school. We are safe here. I have a good job at Reebok. Unlike my wife, we have people half age, our family. We love our new land and freedom. Thank you so much.